On September 6, 2021, Chris Skinner was found in the pool at the Emmons Preserve Clubhouse in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Chris was a quadriplegic but could navigate his wheelchair on his own. His daily routine was to walk the dog and then stop by the pool. That morning, it was reported that a neighbor let him into the pool and that Chris told him he was meeting someone to play chess, but no one else showed up, at least not anyone who showed up on camera. The security video shows Chris by the side of the pool, then his wheelchair speeds up and he ended up in the pool strapped into that wheelchair. Then the video cuts out, and when it comes back on, the paramedics are at the scene. Chris was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. Chris's family has recently asked the Horry County coroner to look back into Chris's case. We've learned that 2 weeks before Chris's death, he confronted John Paul Miller and told him to leave his wife alone. John Paul was the pastor at the church the Skinners attended. His wife, Micah, was found deceased from a gunshot wound on April 27, 2024, in Robeson County, North Carolina. The powers that be in Robeson County ruled that gunshot to be self-inflicted, but there are plenty of us who believe that it was not. John Paul and Suzie are now open with their relationship, but are trying to convince everyone that they only started dating earlier this year. No one believes them. If you want to catch up on the case, I have a long playlist of videos about it. Fair warning, though, it's an entire field of rabbit holes. Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the interview that little Suzie Skinner had at the Myrtle Beach Police Department, and wowza, it went in a direction I didn't think it would. Little Baked Tater is a big ol', well, we'll get to that. I couldn't find the name of the officer that interviewed Suzie, so I'm just going to call him Halfwit because he's dumb. Fitz News released the audio recording of this interview, and even though they have broken my heart a little, I'll still give them credit. And the cause of my broken heart is that they interviewed me about 2 months ago, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 at this point, and then never posted the interview. Maybe I just suck at being interviewed. Anyway, let's get on to this interview of Suzie's so I can stop saying the word interview. Halfwit starts off by explaining that Suzie isn't in trouble, but still has to sign a Miranda rights form. And Suzie was all like,
"Why would my Miranda rights be read?"
Well, Suzie, if you'd watched some true crime, you'd know that anytime anyone talks to the police at the police station, they are read their Miranda rights. So we're off to a pretty defensive start. And let me just say that while Halfwit is reading the Miranda rights, he said, "You have the right to talk to an attorney and have him present while you are being questioned." Him. Now, I don't know if he knows who Suzie's attorney is, but if not, I sincerely hope he realizes that even us women folk can be attorneys these days. I know. How crazy is that? And don't tell anyone, but we can even own our own property, and even more horrifying is they let us vote now. Anyway, that bit just stuck in my craw. Back to the interview. Halfwit goes on to explain that Chris's family had contacted the coroner's office and weren't happy with the outcome of the investigation into Chris's death. The coroner reached out to the Myrtle Beach Police Department and asked if they'd be willing to interview some people to get clarification. And the Myrtle Beach Police Department said, "Well, sure thing, Chicken Wing. We aren't really doing anything else worth a rat's toot." Now, that might be a bit of a paraphrase. Halfwit told Suzie that during her initial interview with police in 2021, she never alluded to the possibility of Chris taking his own life. She had told them that there was no way he would have done it to himself, that it had to be an accident, or maybe there was something wrong with his chair. Halfwit told her they just wanted to clarify her original statement and wondered if there was anything different she would say today. Now, I would say that Suzie simply replied with a well-thought-out explanation, but I would be lying my stretch pants all the way off. She starts in with, quote, "Let me break this down for you," end quote, and started explaining Chris's injury and which vertebrae were involved and what muscles functioned or didn't function, and where he had or didn't have any sensation. She also mentioned that she's a physical therapist and specialized in spinal cord injuries. Why did she mention all this? I have no idea. She just started in. What was even weirder than her explaining this was that she kept referring to Chris in the present tense. It's pretty fascinating, psychologically speaking. And while I'm not anywhere close to being any kind of brain expert, I have some theories as to why she would use present tense. The first is that she still hasn't accepted that Chris is dead, but I'm pretty sure that's not it. Another is that the cheese has completely slid off her cracker, which would be understandable given how much time she's spending with John Paul Miller. The third theory is that back in 2021, she had rehearsed what she was going to say to the police, and so she is still speaking to them today in the way she spoke to them then. It would have made a lot more sense to still talk about Chris in the present tense immediately after he died, but almost 4 years later is just weird. Also, I'm not ruling out that she might be using her original narration she gave to the police in 2021 and also be totally bonkers. Suzie goes on to explain that the night before Chris died, he had forgotten to take his medication and she had forgotten to give it to him. So she gave him his medication that morning, and then Chris took the dog for a walk and went to the pool. She thinks that he fell asleep and went into the pool. She said that at least one day a week, he would fall asleep while he was out on that walk. And then she said this.
Yes, I think he fell asleep or whatever. I don't know. I haven't seen the video.
Wait, she still hasn't watched the video? I understand that it isn't easy to watch. I mean, I didn't even know Chris, and it was difficult for me to watch it. However, if my husband died and there was any doubt about his manner of death, I would want to know and I'd do whatever it took to find out, even the extremely difficult things. But I think Suzie explains why she didn't watch it a little later in the interview. Suzie also explained that Chris had started sleeping on the sofa because he didn't get sores on it like he did when he was in the bed. She said that she slept on an inflatable mattress on the floor next to him. When she said that Chris hadn't slept the night before, I got the impression that it was because he hadn't taken his medicine. So why didn't she just give it to him that night? And then Suzie did something that I didn't know she could do. She showed emotion.
I'm the one that lives with him. I'm the one that takes care of him. I'm the one that was there the night before. I'm the one that got him up that morning. I'm the one that gives him the medication. Not these other people. I'm the one that lives with him. Yes, I know he's sad. He's freaking paralyzed for 21 years. Would you not be sad? But does that guarantee 100% that he killed himself? I have no idea. I am not a detective and I was not in his mind that morning. That is what I told that detective, and that is exactly what I stand by today.
Well, my, Suzie is an angry little elf. That's what that sounds like to me, anger and resentment. And not anger that Chris died, but that she had to take care of him. Suzie met Chris after he became paralyzed. She was his physical therapist. And I sometimes wonder if she had the delusional thought that she was going to be able to heal him, and that's why she married him. Or possibly she was young and didn't realize the amount of care that she would have to give to Chris. Although, as a physical therapist, she should have known, regardless of her age. Halfwit then asked Suzie why she thought the subject of Chris's death was coming up again now, why his family was bringing it to their attention 4 years later. And Baked Tater said it was because of us YouTubers. Quote, because there's a bunch of YouTubers that are talking about other topics that have said Chris killed himself." End quote. Well, I've never said I believe that Chris killed himself, and she didn't mention me by name, but I hope with all my heart that she was thinking of me when she said that. And do you think she used the word tuber because I call her baked tater? So Suzie blamed social media, but then she said that, quote, "My sister-in-law was mad at me because she came to me like the next day or whatever, and I said, 'Well, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know if you did or not.' And I said, 'But I really don't want you talking to the kids about that. They're 14 years old.'" End quote. So Chris's sister Tamra asked Suzie about the possibility of Chris taking his own life the day after he died, but now it's the YouTuber's fault. How does that make sense? Halfwit then asked Suzie if Chris ever talked about a self-inflicted death, and she said he would get depressed and talk about it, and that he said that the only way he could even physically do it would be to drive his wheelchair into a pool. She said the day before his death he was acting normal and taught their daughter how to serve a volleyball. Halfwit asked Suzie if she thought Chris had talked to his children about ending his life, and if there was any suicide note. Suzie said the only way Chris would have been able to leave one would be on his computer or his phone, and it would be more likely to have been on his phone. She said that she didn't find one. But was his phone with him when he went into the pool? And if so, was any data able to be extracted from it? Then Halfwit asked Suzie if she had any more to say, and by golly, she did.
And I wish that my husband could just be remembered for being an amazing person. And I don't know why we have to bring it up and try to make him look like... Again, like, what's the goal? You want him to look like a loser? You want him to look like he left his family? Do you want him to... I mean, what is the goal? Do you want to expose that he was in this horrible despair as a quad? Like, what's the goal? Did he do it? I don't know. Yeah. And I don't care. Listen, not one other person was there. Yes, there's a video, but not one other person was there. So can you say with 100% certainty? Can his sister say that with 100% certainty? Well, she knows.
So Suzie thinks people who commit suicide are losers. I'm not going to repeat the words that came out of my mouth when I heard her say that, but I think that statement tells you everything you need to know about Suzie Skinner. Many, many years ago, I was suicidal, more than once. I was in the loony bin for a month on one occasion, and on another I was so medicated that I was a zombie, but it was the only thing keeping me alive in that moment. But I don't just hate what she said for myself. I hate it for everyone else who has been at that depth of despair, and I hate it for every person who has lost someone to suicide. In fact, I probably hate it more for others than myself because I know I'm better now, and I know others are still struggling with their mental health. So, Suzie, how about you keep your filthy whore mouth shut when you get the urge to say horrible things like that? But in that less than a minute statement, Suzie also gave what I think is the reason that she didn't watch the video of Chris going into the pool. Quote, "Did he do it? I don't know, and I don't care." End quote. Chris had a website that he used to promote his motivational speaking. He had photos, videos, journals, and sold his book on it. I think Suzie's "I don't care" statement shows in the fact that she didn't keep Chris's website going after he died. She could have turned it into a tribute to Chris and could have kept his legacy and his work going after he was gone, but she didn't. When video was shared of the day that Chris died, there's a clip where Suzie is walking out to where John Paul Miller and Micah were standing. Suzie has her hand in the air like she's praising Chris's death. We've learned that Suzie stopped bathing Chris the week before his death. That makes me think that she wasn't on any inflatable mattress on the floor next to him the night before he died. We've also learned that according to the affidavit of John Paul Miller's first wife, Allison, Chris confronted John Paul 2 weeks before his death to tell him to leave his wife and family alone. Allison alleged that John Paul and Suzie had been having an affair. I think Suzie has shown her I don't care, and now she's said it out loud. Then Suzie took time in the interview to badmouth Chris's family. I guess that's how she and John Paul bond, because he loves badmouthing Micah's family. And I'm not going to get into what she said about the Skinners because I don't believe anything about it. I think she's mad because they brought their concerns to the coroner. But during that diatribe, she did mention that every morning, before she went to work, she would leave Chris 2 cups of water and a package of crackers or something that he could slide off the desk and eat. But that sometimes he dropped it, but most of the time he'd landed in his mouth. Hang the heckety-heck all the way on. Was that really all Chris ate during the day? Or was there a caregiver that came in to give him lunch and help him? Please someone tell me that she didn't make this man live all day on crackers and water. Then Baked Tater said, quote, I have my thought of what happened. Nobody else was there. Doesn't really matter what my thought is. It doesn't really matter what her thought is, meaning Chris's sister. He's in heaven with Jesus and he's not here. That's where we are, so whatever, end quote. Yeah, doesn't matter how he died, so whatever. This woman, y'all. Whew. Then she said that, quote, you know he passed out all the time too, but I doubt that's what happened that morning. He had super low blood pressure, so he always took in the morning medicines. He had 2 proamotine, so that would raise his blood pressure. If he passed out, he wouldn't have been able to drive his chair, end quote. Well, hold up there, Suzie Q. If your theory is that Chris fell asleep and went into the pool, then that same idea should hold if he passed out. But Tater is a thinker, and she immediately realized what she said and changed it to, quote, well, I don't know if his hand was on the joystick. That would happen too. Sometimes his hand would be on the joystick and he didn't realize it because he couldn't feel it, end quote. After that, Suzie decided she needed to just stop talking. Then Halfwit made the statement that earned him the nickname I gave him. And in the statement, he's referring to Chris's sister. Quote, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think she got caught up in the YouTube theories and all that. You know, it was kind of the talk of the town for a little bit, and I think she got wrapped up in it, and it got her mind racing, and she talks to family, and that got you. I think it was just a ripple effect. So unfortunately, you were caught up in that ripple effect because you were, directly related to the case. But I wouldn't worry too much about it going forward, end quote. And again, Suzie already admitted that Chris's sister mentioned him taking his own life the day after his death. Besides Halfwit, you might find a YouTuber or two who knows more about Chris's and Micah's cases than you do. And I don't think Suzie's been worried about it at all. Yes, she did cry during the interview, but guess what? A lot of people cry when they're angry. So there we have it. If you haven't listened to the full interview, you should. Suzie was almost animated enough that I thought maybe I could add a topping like grated cheese to her nickname. But with her animation just being what seemed like mostly anger, I think her topping would have to be raisins or something equally as diabolical to put on a baked potato. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe as this helps my channel grow. And while I know most of you watching this don't watch my other videos, could you maybe pass them along to someone who is a true crime junkie? Especially people who might enjoy vintage crime? I would love you forever if you did. I mean, I'll love you forever regardless, but I just need a little help with my channel right now. And as always, until next time, stay safe and be happy.